I mean, truly, it's like, are they going to be out here fighting for water?
Yeah.
Like, this is a real question. Are they going to have access to the things that we simply take for granted, in big ways and in small? And so in thinking about that, it just felt more urgent than ever to work on problems that were addressing that.
Welcome to Another Way Through, a podcast featuring stories of folks who used to trade their authenticity for safety and acceptance and have found their way to lives filled with greater peace, joy, and freedom. These stories will remind you and affirm for you that if you're thinking of following that inner voice telling you that there's something bigger out there for you, even if it's a little bit scary, that there's another way through for you too. Let's get into the episode. Action. Welcome. I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for being here. I was thinking about where to even begin with this podcast episode. You're one of my nearest and dearest friends, and we are coming up on 10 years. I was like doing the calculations, and a lot has happened in 10 years. So much. We've been through many phases and iterations of life together. So I was like, where do we start? And I was like, let's just see where the conversation takes us. I think when we met, I was like, I know this person is going to be in my life for a long time. And so glad that you're here. And so maybe we can start with kind of what was happening up into your life and to the point that we met, which was about 2016, 2015. And we met during a very pivotal time, I think, for both of us, where we were getting our MBA, and so much of our life had to lead to that point. And that was, I think, a moment that shifted a lot for both of us. But can you just tell the people, I'm so excited to introduce you to my audience, but tell the people like what led you to getting your MBA, kind of what path were you on up until the point where we met in like 2015, 2016.
And became soul sisters.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I am so excited to just be here with you in this space, and it feels like this lovely full circle moment for many reasons that hopefully we'll get into. But okay, so 2016, I mean, what a time when we started a business school. I feel like a completely different person in many ways, and I'm also
versions later
grateful for that version of myself. You know, I think coming in, I had moved from Boston to the Bay Area. That was my first big move across the country. First time being away from family. A lot of my family is focused in Boston, and a big career transition like most folks do when they're going to business school, right? You're looking for something, not quite sure what, want some self-directed time, if you will, to figure it out. It's a very expensive way to do it. But
very costly, but
nonetheless, worth it. Definitely worth it. Worth it. And yeah, I was just looking for some answers. And I think what's interesting, because we've talked about this, is I think I already had a lot of the answers that I was probably looking for, but had come from a very traditional background. I was working in finance and accounting for a very long time. I was at PwC working there for, I think at that time, maybe 7 years.
Long time.
And yes, a very, very long time. Started on the accounting side and then transitioned over to working in corporate social responsibility. And that's really where there was an unlock for me. I think I realized for the first time, wait, business can be used to do good in the world in a really tangible way. And there's also access to all these dollars and all this capital that, if treated the right way, could be transitioned to actually doing really good work. And so excited by that thought and those opportunities. I was like, well, there has to be more. Like, how can I push this a little bit more? And business school felt like a way for me to just open up a realm of what I thought was possible, because I didn't even know that corporate responsibility existed until I started working at PwC. And I think until I went to business school, I didn't know anything about, one, the industry that I ended up in, but two, just like what would be possible for me there.
Yeah. So we talked about this recently, and this idea of like looking for answers, but then knowing what you know now, kind of looking back and being like, I kind of always knew. And so when you said you didn't know about corporate social responsibility until you got that job, and I know that you sort of found your way and sort of created that opportunity for yourself to be marrying business with this idea of greater impact. But what was that sort of inner knowing, and maybe if you can think back to like what did you know that you're seeing and confirming now that you were always kind of on this right path, even if on the outside looking in you were maybe on a more traditional looking path?
Right.
Like what did you already know?
There's always the signals. So I was recently looking for something in my Google Drive, right? And so I typed in a few words, and I came across my thesis for college, my senior year
way
thesis.
Back. Yeah.
Way back. I don't even know how I had it saved. Anyway, I start to read this, and my thesis, when I was, mind you, majoring in finance and accounting and was already very clearly going to go work and have private equity clients and venture clients as my, like that was going to be my base and my focus. My thesis at the time was on garment worker rights in Bangladesh and how corporations needed to play a significant role in correcting the harm that they caused to these communities that they used in order to thrive. And when I was reading that, I'm like, well, very interesting that I convinced whatever professor that like this is what I was going to write about as an accounting major. But what was clear to me is I already had a vision for like what's important to you, what do you want to focus on, even if it feels like that's not possible for you right now? Because I think an important part of my story is that financial sustainability has always played a role, or oftentimes, let me not say always, oftentimes played a role in the decisions that I've had to make. And so at the time it was like, okay, we can be interested in this over here and we can want to dig in, but like we're going to create a financial safety net. And so let's work over here and do some of this accounting pieces. But the knowing was there, right? And so in translating it to the work that I do now, like that was, and this was, you know, however many moons ago, it was just wild to just read that paper and hear that version of myself who was in there, despite the path that I was headed, like had very clear direction on what she wanted and what she was interested in. And I just always knew.
Yeah, shout out young Camille for
Her.
wisdom. So let's talk about what you do now, because knowing what I know about you, I love how much you're just a brilliant connector, and you even connected me into this space where we're sitting today, which is a story for another day, but I'm so grateful. But you also just connect so many dots really powerfully in a way that I think is a gift, like is a superpower. And I see you weave together now, right? You say coming up to the work that you do now, this idea of responsibility that we as people with privilege or corporations that have a lot of power and a lot of impact in the world, that how you weave together the idea of sustainability and the responsibility that we all have, as well as the sort of reclamation and broadening of that word and what it means and how it's always been a value in our communities, as well as like storytelling. And now I know your journey as a mother, so many things that you weave together in your work. Can you talk to us a little bit about what it is that you do now, what you focus on, and maybe how that wisdom from young Camille was always guiding you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a climate and impact strategist. And so in the kind of day-to-day world, I'm working with corporations, big and small, household name and not, on just how can they really look at their business operations and frankly just like be better to the planet.
Do better.
Like do better.
Yeah,
okay.
Seriously.
And what that looks like is thinking about their supply chain. Within our supply chains, like are there areas where, and without getting like overly technical, like where we can decarbonize, where we can transition to cleaner energy, where we can think about a people first strategy also to doing a lot of these things. When I think about young Camille, she really struggled with the idea of being in climate and being an environmentalist, because to me that was, oh, you care about just the planet, the resources, not the people.
Yeah.
And being in my body as a Black woman, caring about people is just, it's just how I live.
It just is, yeah.
It just is, right? And so I struggled with that really early on, of just, even though I wanted to chase some of these things around sustainability and climate, but I'm like, but wait, it's always about the people. Thinking back to this piece that I wrote, it was about the people. But a lot of the damage that was caused could be related back to different environmental harm. But anyway, without going on a tangent around that, it's just been this wonderful journey for me to come back to embracing what it does mean to be an environmentalist, because it actually is people first. And I think there's a lot of really wonderful people who are doing work to use the word really reclaim that and broaden and challenge an area that I think has been very whitewashed, frankly, because being an environmentalist, being in sustainability, particularly having Caribbean roots, that has always also been very deeply in me. And so in kind of working with these corporations and helping them, that's like one piece of it. But on the other side, it's really about helping others see themselves in this space, because that is something that I struggled with for a really long time. And making those connections and building those dots. I remember thinking back to business school when I really first started to dig into what is this other area that I felt like has been calling me, but I've maybe been resisting. Where could I maybe find myself within that? And there were a few people at the time who really were doing the work to help decolonize, frankly, the environmentalist space. So Dominique Drakeford, Whitney McGuire. At the time they had I can't remember what the name of the podcast was, or the platform. I think it was Sustainable BK. And it was this whole idea of, as Black people, sustainability, we have been stewards of sustainability. Yes. Sustainability has been in us. You think about, I think they use the example of a plastic bag, right? And everybody has those under their sink or somewhere in their house.
A bunch of them.
If you are a person of color, and it might be used as a shower cap. It might be used as an additional trash bag in the bathroom. But this concept and this idea of resourcefulness and waste not, did we call it sustainability? No. Right? But was that the innate way of being? You open up the cookies that never had cookies in them, right? And so it was very much always a cultural part of my identity, and I think the identity of folks that are around me, but they don't necessarily see themselves reflected in that. And so another layer of my work is helping to bridge that connection by sharing stories about climate and community and culture, and how these things are all very, very linked and intertwined.
Absolutely. I think language really matters, and also our ideas or the concepts and how we tend to define them. If we see them in a very particular way that feels like that's for that group, that doesn't really, I don't really identify with that, then I guess sustainability and climate is not really for me, or the things that are really true and core values in my community aren't reflected in the people that I'm seeing talk about it. And you've talked to me a lot lately about community-driven events that both you're participating in or you're leading, where you see how we're sort of taking it back, we're reclaiming it, we're saying, actually, this is something we've always been doing. So you gave some examples, but maybe for the people that are like, I don't really know if I'm about that, like I have maybe other problems or other things that I'm more focused on. What are some examples of either opportunities to get involved or things that people might already be doing that they're not really thinking of as sustainability, and just sort of like make that more, maybe bring it home for people a little bit more?
Yes. Well, before I answer your question, I want to start with, I think a lot of work has been done to really put, frankly, blame for where we are in the climate crisis on everyday people. And that was very much by design by fossil fuel companies to say, like, well, actually, if you just recycle a little bit more, if you just, waste a little bit less, buy a little bit less, then we will, or buy differently, right? Like buy sustainable products. Like we can buy our way out of this. It's just you guys need to change things that you're doing. And while that absolutely is essential, and I'll get to that piece of it, very much so, like, the root cause of the climate crisis is, like many other problems that we're facing, it's a few rich people, rich corporations, who are really responsible for the vast majority of the climate crisis. So I want to start there because I think that's an important starting point, is that our participation in this is necessary, but our voice in advocating for change from the powers that be is really essential too, and they own a lot of this, and in that we're not powerless, right? Mm-hmm. So to get to your question around just like connecting it back, I mean, it's like, do you care about clean air? You know, we're sitting here in Los Angeles after a very difficult year with the wildfires, and I think everybody who's been here in LA can say, like, having to reckon with just the idea of clean air. Yeah. It's, I mean, there's nothing, I hadn't experienced anything quite like that before, right? Do you care about clean water?
Yeah. These are things that we sort of take for granted, fundamental, haven't really had to think about.
Fundamental things. And I think for me, it's all of these things are so inextricably linked that, and making that link clear to people is without getting into all of the science and the why and all of that, is what's really, really just important to me. So I think if anything we do and we touch is very much connected back to our relationship to nature. And so without getting into the science, part of what I feel like is more important is, how do we get people just like outside and in nature again? How do we repair that relationship? Because if you're in like anything, if you're in relationship with someone, you start to see just like more of how you're connected. There's layers, right? And so it's like some of the orgs that I love that are getting people outside: Pacific Town Club, Hike Club, Sway does a lot of recycling, but also not necessarily outside in nature, but how do I get you in a tactile way to connect to waste even, or what people would deem as waste. And so I think some of those modalities are really exciting to connect people back to this idea of like, I can be in relation to nature. And through that, I think there's a lot more healing, because we know the stats. Like, I can sit here and talk about how bad all these things are, but I don't necessarily know that moves people. But I do think having a real relationship and being in relationship, and also, of course, like storytelling, those are the most powerful tools we have.
Yeah, just getting people opportunities to, in a very practical, tactical way, like have these moments of exposure and say, like, this is it, as opposed to some like thing that's so big and outside of, like stats, don't always move people, even if they're very important. Okay, shifting gears, I want to talk a little bit, well, everything's all related, but I know that in the last few years I've watched you become a mom. And I know that your journey in motherhood has also really been a part of kind of deepening your connection to this idea of legacy and what you're leaving behind, the impact that you're making on the world that is the world that your children will inherit, that will be the world that they're in beyond us, right? And so I'm curious how being a mother, how seeing the world through your children's eyes, how it's impacted your commitment and the action that you take around sustainability and climate.
Everything. Short answer. Man, just becoming a mom has been just the best thing ever. And like, you hear people say you transform, you become this new person. There's certainly parts of myself that I've had to grieve, that I've had, as I'm in becoming a new person, have had to leave behind. And there's certainly a grieving process to that. But the rebirthing process also has been amazing. I think one thing for me, I am a recovering people pleaser. And in being a mom, I've just had to let so much of that go, because I actually don't have the time to care what others' perceptions are of what I'm doing, or my perception of their analysis of what I'm doing, because sometimes it actually is also just I'm thinking that something's happening versus it actually being reality that it's happening when it comes to people's opinions about my life and what I might be doing. And there's just this urgency, the word that you used, to think about a couple of things. One, like, what my kids are always watching. So what is my daughter seeing? What is my son seeing when I'm working, when I'm talking about what work might do to me? Am I excited? Am I feeling depleted all the time? And work is never going to be this, like, I mean, we all know, like, there's always admin. There's always, like, the non-sexy things about what you do. Doesn't matter how much you love your job. But what imprint do I want to leave on them about the role that work should play in your life? And then in just a more tangible way, like, what am I leaving for them? And not in the kind of capitalist sense of financial resources, things like that. Of course, you know, you think about those things too, but also, like, is there going to be a planet left for them to inherit? And what is that going to look like? Like, I oftentimes, you know, I'm a huge fan of Octavia Butler, and we don't need to get into all of her predicting incredible, but I mean, truly, it's like, are they going to be out here fighting for water? Like, this is a real question. Is, you know, are they going to have access to the things that we simply take for granted, in big ways and in small? And so in thinking about that, it just felt more urgent than ever to work on problems that were addressing that. And in working in retail, working for a lot of different retail companies, a lot of the work that I was doing was more focused on, like, consumption. And even if it was a little bit more of a responsible consumption, it's still consumption. And so really redirecting and focusing my work from, you know, well, very much the whole journey from finance and accounting to working in fashion tech, where you're kind of working through the life cycle of clothing and trying to get people to be more responsible, to really thinking about, okay, how do we actually fix these climate challenges, was very much driven by motherhood.
So I have two follow-up questions to that. The first is, you know, our kids definitely are, well, I don't have kids yet, but kids, I know that they are doing what you are doing more than what you tell them to do is important. Like, that's why they do things like push strollers or vacuum. It's because they watch adults around them and they model their own behavior after them. And so I'm curious how, with these different events that either you are leading or you're participating in, how do you involve your children in that, and what do you hope they pick up in terms of the behaviors?
Yes. So one is just bringing them along. I think for a long time, actually, earlier on in my motherhood journey, struggled with this idea of, okay, work you is here, and then motherhood you is over here.
Compartmentalization.
And they're separate things, and, like, your kids are going to, you know, and this just, like, does not work. Or for me, it did not work. And so there needed to be this, like, integration. So frankly, I'm just, like, also bringing them to things. So they can also see different ways of working, different ways of being. I know my daughter, she'll joke sometimes, say, I need to work, Mama. I need my laptop. And I'm like, well, that's one way to work, right? But there's, like, all these other different ways to work too. Like, there are people who work in the oceans and, like, are just down there swimming with the fish or identifying, you know, different things in the ocean. There are people who work in the forests and they're rangers and they're walking around and they're getting to know the different trees and the plants and, like, being caretakers for them. And so she's like, looks at me like, okay, but I need my laptop.
She already knows.
All right.
She already
so
knows.
You know, it's just like little things to demonstrate that there are different possibility models. So I think for me, just this whole concept of knowing what's possible by just seeing it or being introduced to it, and not even in big ways, but just in small ways, you know, you don't have to force it, is huge for just how I approach my motherhood and parenting. So it's just bringing them along. And then I think it's in micro moments where, you know, my kid will say, hey, like, this is broken. We need to get a new one. And I'm like, hold on, wait. We don't need to get a new one. Let's fix it. Let's see what's broken about it. Let's see if we have some tools. Maybe we can fix it. If we can't fix it, let's see if we can find somebody else who knows how to fix it. So just also this idea of, you know, or challenging the notion of consume. You don't have it, you just buy one and it shows up the next day. And in the concept that they do see everything that we do, they also see when the packages are arriving every day.
They're like, I want a package. I want a
package.
I want an Amazon membership.
I want something, you know what I mean? And so it like they truly see everything.
Yeah,
so I think yes,
mm-hmm.
and they're also living in a different world. Like we didn't necessarily live in the world where anything
mm-hmm.
that you wanted you could get on demand
mm-hmm.
in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so trying to challenge that where I can, and offer alternative ways of being for my kids is part of it too. So that it's not just the first thing you think about is preparing it. And so this has interestingly, I don't want to say backfired on me, but you know, my daughter has this pair of pants that she loves, and they are just, I mean, they're like polyester. Don't get me started on polyester, but they're polyester. And so they're just like tattered, and it's just to me beyond repair. Yeah. Right. But they're her favorite pants. So I'm like, these have a hole in them. We're going to have to, you know, do our process of how we get rid of clothes. And I'm like, okay, we're going to have to like bag those up and send those off to recycling. Like they're done. And she's like, Mama, no, we can put a patch on that hole. It's fine. And so the pants are still there. Mm-hmm. They are definitely like they above her ankles at this point, but they're still there. But it was, and in that moment I was like, all right, bet. Like I'm gonna have to just throw a patch on these, and the pants will live to see another day, despite me very much wanting to just like use them as like wash rags. And that was a beautiful moment, because in these small instances of trying to redirect or trying to share a different way of being, like the kids are picking it up.
She said, Mom, have you heard of an heirloom? These polyester pants. I'm going to pass these down. These are in our family now.
I mean, the sad part is they would probably still be around. So.
Oh, true. Anyway.
Because plastic.
She said she got to get that in. All right. She did want to let you know about polyester after all.
Yes.
So my second follow-up question is really thinking about making that pivot, right? Bringing back to the journey that we've been on together. Since our MBA, we actually spent, now that we're here in LA, pursuing what we want to be doing. But before that, we were also 6 years we spent as corporate neighbors with a little parking lot in between. We used to steal away to get our little boba dates sometimes. We would go into, shout out San Carlos. And
Valley.
Yeah, it was a different life, right? What we're doing now is really, I can speak for hopefully both of us, where it's like really combining all of the various pieces of ourselves, not that compartmentalization, but integration of all the things we care about with creating an impact and, you know, doing really well for ourselves. That had to be a pivot as well, right? There had to be some challenging decisions, courageous moments that you had to overcome to do what you're doing now versus even the post-MBA version of the traditional path, right? Mm-hmm. So can you talk about the more recent kind of courageous decisions you had to make that possible?
Mm-hmm. That's a beautiful question. Courageous decisions. Oh, man, I don't know if at the time they felt as momentous as maybe they feel now, or kind of been reflecting on it. But a big one for me was just getting over, I say was, it's probably is active, okay? This fear of being perceived.
Yes.
And some advice that I received earlier on in my career, which I actually think was to my detriment, was that whenever you make your next step, you need to be able to explain where it sits in the story. And I was so fixated on that idea. Like, okay, so I'm in business school now. I'm a corporate responsibility girly. The next step will hopefully get me closer to being a fully sustainable fashion girly. That did manifest through working at Poshmark and through a lot of the work that I was able to do there. But now what? So now a whole new part of my identity. I went from corporate responsibilities to sustainability girly. What is the next part of the story? And even in that, and having a child, I wanted to do some maternal health work at the time. And I really struggled with this idea of like, well, I can't do all these things, right? And like, who says who?
That one person that
says
one
that
time.
one person that one person that one time, you know? And having to just like release this pressure of the story needs to make sense, everything needs to build. You can be one realized version of yourself, so you better pick right. Okay? Because if you pick wrong, then we're starting back over, right? And so unwinding that belief was a process. So I'm even trying to think of like a moment. I don't know if there was a moment, but I think being able to just sit with myself and slowly unwind that became huge. And in that, as related, is this fear of being perceived. Okay, well, now if I could just be whatever I want to be, like if that's real and available to me, well, now what? Well, now it's on me to actually just get out and like do the things that I know are inside. And that's a whole nother challenge in and of itself, right? Because it's like once you've decided, then actually the action is huge too. And so baby steps. So I'm like, I don't even know if it was a moment, but I think these little baby steps to help chip away at that is I think what got me there. And so one more recently that I can point to is when after I think I was pregnant with my second, and I was coming back from maternity leave. I had left my tech job, all these things. And I had reached out to a friend and I said, look, like, I don't think I need anything right now, but as I'm reemerging, here's the type of things that I want to work on. I actually have not a ton of experience in this specific thing, but I really want to do it. And I know I can. I'm a highly capable person. Just think of me. And that felt awful to like say out. Like it was scary and not awful, but scary to say, to like put myself out there in that way. But I think at that point I had reached a level where I was like, okay, well, there's nothing to lose. There's nothing to lose. Like I don't really, and this person, she's gonna be listening to this, I admire her and all the things, but I also was like, I don't care what she thinks. If she's like, oh, Camille, I cannot believe this girl got a job afterwards. Like, what? She don't know her steps are not aligned. Like, you know, God always has my steps aligned. But, you know,
Absolutely.
Just this idea of, oh my gosh, what's she gonna, like, releasing that, huge.
Yeah, I'm curious, you mentioned sitting with yourself, unlearning some things, right? You know me. You know I'm a deep girly. I'm a coach. I'm all the things, therapy girly. I'm just curious, what are some of those practices or tools that you picked up, right? Because we were on that journey of doing the thing you're supposed to do. Every step needs to make sense from the previous step, and there's a level of sort of constriction and like, I can't possibly step outside of this, otherwise I would be too painful for me, or I would be not accepted, or it wouldn't make sense. And you talked about the fear of being perceived, and it's ongoing. It's still happening. We both are, we're both constantly working through those things, even as we're elevating. But it's like looking back, I'm maybe not as afraid as I used to be, even if there are new fears that I'm uncovering. But what are some of the tools or the support that you got, or things, just because I'm thinking about the audience of people that might be on the other side of a pivot. They're thinking about making a big shift and they haven't yet made it. What are some of the things that helped you as you decided to take some of those, even if they were small baby steps?
So there were really two layers to it. One was reflection. So that's going to be like the writing, the journaling, and of course therapy. All really, really important tools. I, however, am someone who can reflect till the end of time.
Still reflecting right now.
I'm just reflecting right now. And so that's wonderful, right? And you need to do that. I needed to do that to be a part of the process that I needed to go through. But action, by far, was the most important tool. And so what that looked like was putting myself out there for different projects that at the time seemed like a stretch, and sometimes they were a stretch, but most of the times they were not a stretch, right? Like it was just in my mind. I wasn't sure if I could do it, but it's like I could do it. And just getting over that and actually moving towards action. And so I remember in the beginning, I just started consulting for startups that were sustainable brands and thinking about, okay, like how can I actually help you grow? How can I help you address some of the challenges that you're seeing? And it felt safe because I was doing it, we were both kind of learning as we go. They were smaller organizations. And in the doing, like, life unravels and it shows itself. It really shows itself. And through some of those early relationships, the next opportunity came, and then the next opportunity came. And so the reflection is so, 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 so important. But the doing, the small action, I think that's really where the confidence comes. That's where the growth comes. And, a friend reminded me, like, nobody just knows what you're doing. Like, you need to also tell people
absolutely
what you're doing and what you're working on. And then by doing that, you're kept in mind for things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. And I think a couple things I'm hearing there. One, it's a balance of both. You can't just only reflect and not act. You can't just be acting without any sort of reflection on who am I, what do I care about, what do I maybe need to let go of. That's a previous version of me, right? It's that balance between the two. And some of us, like probably both of us, might skew towards only one and not the other. And other people might need to. So it's like multiple levers that you can pull, right? I'm curious about one thing I know to be your superpower, right? And it's funny because when you know someone really, really well and you know how amazing they are, it's also interesting to know the inner workings of how they might, doubt themselves or question themselves, right? And things like, oh, what is this person going to think if I reach out? I'm like, girl, of course they're going to want to help you. You're amazing, all of those things, right? And so I'm curious both for, people out there listening, but also for like the younger versions of yourself and maybe the version of you right now that's still sometimes afraid of being perceived. Like, what is if we channel your most confident, your most like, look at how far I've come, look at all the things I've built version of Camille, what advice, what encouragement, what affirmation would you give those parts that are maybe still scared?
I would say everything is already within you. And everyone is waiting. It's as simple as that.
That's beautiful. Everyone is waiting. But truly, no one can be you. Literally, no one in this earth is you and has all of the various gifts, experiences, talents, just all of the things that you bring to this world. I'm saying this to you and to all of us. And it's just like the world needs it, right? And I'm curious your thoughts on this because this is a deep belief that I have. And it's how many times in the last many years have we said now more than ever, right? But I think us as Black women, as women of color, as people of color, right? There are so many ways, and tying it back to even the conversation around climate, where it's like, we've been doing this and you took it away from us. You removed us. You put us in these environments where we didn't have access to things. So we had to consume these like lower quality things. I'll go on a rant. And then you're telling us we're the problem, or that we can't do it, or we don't see ourselves in the solution, when in reality, when we go back to our practices, indigenous practices, we are the ones that actually must save the world, right? We talked about California, and we know that the stewards of this land had controlled fires for many, many centuries. And somebody came along and was like, that's barbaric, you've got to stop that. And look where we are now, right? We have uncontrolled fires as examples. So when you think about the idea of channeling our gifts, channeling our ancestral wisdom, and being the ones that are actually going to save this planet, what do you have to say to yourself, to your children, to anyone that's thinking about the role that they might play in that, and the encouragement that you have for them into tapping into their gifts and showing up fully?
There's just so much power in remembering, and also remembering truly that is within you. And so, to just share a specific example, my family is from the Caribbean, And I always remember growing up, like my uncle would just say certain things about like the land, like, oh, you know, the mangoes are not going to be good this season because of like XYZ. He just like knew it so well and in his bones. And I feel like we all have like the aunt or uncle who like has the environment in their bones.
Yeah.
And I feel like even growing up, sometimes that was just like a ha 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 type of thing. But it's like, no, like it is actually truly within us. And how can we actually tap into that power and that knowing and remember that because my uncle had it, I have it too. And it is also my responsibility to pass that forward. And maybe it's not at the top of my mind. Maybe there needs to be some excavating to actually get it there. Maybe there needs to be some reading and some educating. Our ancestors have very much offered us up the blueprint already. How can we chase that? And how can we honor that would be what I would encourage others to do. Because I think particularly related to the climate crisis, many of the solutions are already here. Like we're not waiting for, we got to figure this out. Like the solutions are available to us. Some involve technology, some don't. And so like, what are we waiting for? You know? And so it would be that. It would be there's power in remembering, and it is our duty and our responsibility to do something with that.
Yes. Yes. As someone who has reminded me on multiple occasions of, just remember who the fuck you are in multiple meanings of that phrase, right? Both like literally the inner confidence to do the things like reach out to people for opportunities, but also remember the gifts and the knowledge and the wisdom that our ancestors gave us and that we've been cut off from for a long time, because that is what we're going to need to survive on this planet and to turn it around.
Right. And progress over perfection.
Yes.
And as also a recovering perfectionist, being in this work has also taught me to really challenge that notion, because many people view this whole climate thing as like an all or nothing. And it's like, oh, well, never mind. Like, because yes, if we all recycle, like that also is not going to really solve the problem, right? But that doesn't mean you shouldn't recycle at all. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do your part. That doesn't mean that, you know, we can't make incremental change that is also still meaningful in how we act in our relationship to things and many other things, right? And so just progress in our life, progress, and you want to transition to that next thing. What's the small thing that you could do right now? You know? And it might not be perfect. It doesn't need to be perfect. Is not real.
Perfect doesn't exist.
Right?
Or you are
talking
perfect.
To myself too, right?
Yeah,
like,
you're already whole.
You're already whole. You're already whole, and you have it within you. It's just on you to actually do that.
Yeah.
That next action. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay, final question on this. You talked about that advice that you had to unlearn. That was like every step that you take needs to add up with the previous step. And so if you could, instead of looking ahead and say, I know every single step I take is going to perfectly fall in line, even though, yes, like you said, God has aligned your steps so it will happen. Like maybe if you can look back and see how these various parts of you, how these various experiences that you had, these skills and the knowledge that you picked up from various pieces, what advice would you give that part that's like, oh, I've got to make every step make sense? Like, how would you sum that up now instead?
Yeah. Ooh. So, I mean, what I would say is just like do what is it Mariah Carey said? I'm doing the best I can with what I got.
What I got.
Doing the best I can with what I got.
Yeah.
Like, actually, though. Actually that. Because you're not going to, the story is not going to be clear to you. It doesn't need to be. So just do with the information that you have and with the conviction that you have and whatever glimpses of the purpose that you feel is clear to you or not. Some folks is clear as day. Yeah. Others, it takes some excavating, right? Do the next best, do the thing that's in front of you that feels right. And it doesn't all have to make sense. And I think a super clear example for me is I'm like, child, why did you become an accountant? Like, truly. And I know the reason why. Like, I chose to become an accountant very early on in my career, have financial stability, coming out of the recession. Like, there were reasons, right? I look back now, like, I reference a lot of the things that I learned early in my career, working in accounting, working in finance, working for private equity firms and venture capital firms, in the work that I do now, in the companies that I'm able to advocate for. I mean, very clearly, like, in the carbon accounting partners that I'm able to work with. Like, I understand this stuff at a deep level. And did I need that to be successful? Like, no, but it certainly does make me it serves me. It serves me. Yes. And I would have never imagined or really thought that that would have been the path, or that would have been a useful skill set. But in what I do now, but it is.
Yeah.
It is. And so I use that as the example because, like, that's probably the thing I use, like, the least, but it still serves a purpose.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely. I worked in gaming for 6 years, and I don't talk about that. I kind of like, because it doesn't really make sense. But then looking back, it's like the reason I was doing that, I was deeply caring about the stories that were being told. I found my way into the parts of the organization where people cared about the values that they were representing out in the world, and the stories that people saw themselves in, that literally interacting with in a very real, practical way beyond just like consuming. And I think those things still serve me today, even as I am doing something very, very different. And it's important to not, as important as it is to not say I have to add up every single step and make sure every single step makes sense, we also don't have to like cut off certain parts of our past and say, oh, that didn't make sense, and so I'm going to hide that, or I'm not going to talk about it anymore. It's like, no, how does that serve me? There's a reason. There's something about that chapter in my life that made me who I am today and got me to where I am, and I can use and I can pull from all of it.
Absolutely. And like, why leave parts of yourself behind?
Yeah.
You know, they've made you who you are, and that doesn't mean you need to harp on it. That doesn't, you know, go to therapy as it makes sense.
Do it.
Advocate for therapy. But that is also you. Those are, and I had to learn that, like, these are parts of myself, these are parts of my story, where I come from, where I've lived. All of these parts of me make me who I am and enable me to do what I can do and show up as I can, and not even just in work, right? In partnership, in motherhood, in friendship, in relationships, in community. So
yes. Okay, one last question. I think I said that already, but we've talked about remembering who you are. We talked about the fact that a lot of the things that you are really advocating for are things that we as our communities have always done, and so that remembering. But one other thing that I think is really, really valuable, and I'm wanting to talk about more and more in my work, is the power of joy, and kind of not just looking back and remembering, you know, the ways that we survived and those kind of skills, but the ancestral joy and how much we owe it to ourselves and to them to experience that in our lifetime. So I'm just curious, what brings you joy? What are ways that you're calling in more joy to your life?
Ooh, beautiful question. Joy is where it's at, y'all.
Truly.
Truly, because there's just so much going on in the world. Like, you have to tap into the joy. So yeah, I mean, what brings me joy? Like, good music, soca music, cooking when I want to, not when I have to. Being in community with people, because I really do love hearing, like, okay, well, what's your thing? And then I'm like thinking in my Rolodex, who do I know that can connect? Yes. Like, that actually does really, really excite me.
You are this is your superpower for sure.
That brings me a lot of joy. It's just in this web of seemingly interconnectedness, like, how can I do my part to just connect us a little bit more? And I don't even need to know what happened with whoever. I could just go do your thing, right? That brings me a lot of joy. And then, you know, a large part of what I'm trying to do in my work, outside of the work that I do with a lot of larger brands, is find the joy in climate, right? Oof. Find the joy.
Yes.
And we you know, we are where we are, but there are really incredible stories of resilience and happiness and people doing incredible things in this arena that I just think need to be shared a lot more. And so I have a Substack. It's called
Yes.
Crossweave, and that's where I share this commentary around climate and culture and storytelling, highlighting people who are doing incredible things, who can give us hope, where we can lean into joy. Shout out to Radical Clothes Swap. If you are in LA, I love Radical Clothes Swap. That is one that brings me a lot of joy. They're just giving out clothes for free.
Hey, shout out to them.
Shout out
Wow.
to that. How joyful is
Who
it to
doesn't
just
love free?
who doesn't love free? How joyful is it to just to be in this space where people have come together, we have these resources, and we just want to share them with no obligation. And in doing that, we also want to encourage people to unlearn this idea that there needs to be some type of monetary exchange, right?
It's
It's
the
just,
only
I
way.
no longer need this. You can have it,
Yeah.
right? And just even seeing people participate in that, joy.
Yes.
Immediate joy.
Yes. And what do I no longer need that I am giving a happy home?
That I'm giving a happy home.
Yeah.
You know, I have my whole system for when my kids are done with their clothes. I'm like, okay, this friend has a baby this age. Then we're going to send it to the...
Love it.
That brings me joy. Just this idea of like sharing resources and community.
Yes. And I love that tie between, these concepts that sometimes can bring a lot of fear and frustration, right? There's both value and we have to remember that joy also exists. Even at every moment in history, there was always, people falling in love, people meeting each other, community. There was always pockets of joy, and we need to remember that and continue to find it even as things look bleak.
Yes.
So you mentioned the Substack. Can you tell the people how to find you, how they might follow up with you if they're curious to learn more about your work or you?
Yes. Well, definitely check out the Substack. It's Crossweave. Again, just commentary
Beautiful.
on climate, culture, and community. Would love to hear if any listeners are doing really cool things around that space. Please email me, DM me. You can find me on Instagram at Cam Veronica.
Cam Veronica. All right. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here. I want to thank you for not only all that you shared today, just for being a constant source of support and joy in my life. And yeah, just thank you. And for those that are listening, this is Another Way Through. Please like and subscribe on YouTube and follow me on Instagram at Tap Into Your Wellspring. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.